Awesome. Yeah, man, what's going on?
Um, Nothing much. I just came back from a track meet.
Cool. How was that?
We did pretty good. We won, so that's good.
You won, yeah. So you did good.
Yeah, that usually indicated it's good.
Yeah, man, that's so cool. Um, man, so I think I'm gonna try to like record this too. I think it'll be cool.
Okay, sweet.
All right.
I hope it works.
Yeah, I hope it works too. Record on this computer. Record on the cloud. Let's record on the computer, I guess. Or record on the cloud. I don't know. Anyway, this is a super unprofessional way to start. um.
It's okay.
Anyway, man, dude, it's awesome. I love your hair. Looking
Thank you.
looking
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. So so I guess yeah. So this is my friend Bodhi, and if you're listening, there was an episode a while back called Shosani, and that was actually the name that Bodhi gave me the day I met him, and then obviously later that night he shared with me that his name was Bodhi, and I've been wanting him to be on the show for a while, and or like the podcast for a while, because I just felt like his story is so amazing and so powerful and just really communicates the love of God, and how like very small acts of kindness can go really far. Especially nowadays in this like season where it's like really political and like that we're finding reasons to not talk to each other. Acts of kindness can go so far, and that's what I want to encourage you to. You know what I mean? Like to be bold, to step into courage, to be kind. So this is Who Dares Wins. Thank you so much. And my guest today is Bodhi Kolwaite. Is that how you say your last name?
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. So yeah, if you could just like maybe like introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll go back into the narrative from last year, and then we'll catch up to now, and then like when you came back to the city and that whole, I feel like that's what we really should like hone in on, and then if you want to, you can talk about what you're up to now, and that'll be it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I'm Bodhi Kolwaite. I'm from Massachusetts, Weymouth, which is a bit south of Boston, about like a 20-minute drive from Boston. And I'm a senior in high school. I'm an artist, and yeah.
Cool. Yeah, obviously. Man, is that what painting is that behind you? That looks so cool. The
Oh,
one with the
this one?
waves? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a Japanese print my friend gave me a couple years ago for my birthday.
Wow. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's like a whirlpool. I forget the name of the artist, but he's very good.
Yeah, I feel like it's telling into just like what I've learned about you and like our friendship. Just like how like there's a storm, but it's like beautiful. It almost seems like peace within a storm, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think sometimes you don't realize how crazy, if things feel like a big wave or a storm when you're in it, but if you zoom out, you realize it's more of it all makes sense in a way.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool. It's really cool. So let me say, all right, man, it's been so long. Like it's, let me change. This is a glare on these glasses. Anyway, I want you to be able to see my eyes. Sounds like weird. Anyway, yeah. So it's been so long. I'm like such a procrastinator. It's like God will put something on my heart, and I'm like, that's an awesome idea. Let's do it. And then I like wait. But a lot has happened. COVID's happened. The last time we talked was during George Floyd, and that was really powerful just to hear your heart. I'm so amazed by your heart, by your intelligence, by your wisdom. And then just also how, you have an incredible story, and like, and there's just so many more for you. Um, but it's kind of a story that kind of shows you that the enemy wants to kill and destroy and separate and divide and sort of like accuse and make us feel like aliens and all this weirdo stuff. And then but God's love is like really good, but it's hard to get through all of that in order to just feel his pure love. And so I'm just gonna like catch them up real quick. But I met Bodhi about a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, because it was when I first started at Supernatural Ministry School, GCSSM NYC. Woo! And it was like really amazing because I was not really in a season of like outreach. I was always like an outreach guy, but that season I really was focused on like a sort of business that I was helping my friend to do. I'm not part of it anymore, but I wasn't really like. It's kind of crazy because when you're known for that, like you can really like use that to make yourself feel good. Like I'm good, like I help people, or I look to help people or something. But the truth is that I really just wanted to learn from this school, to grow, and like really work on myself. Like I really, it's like some of the most selfish parts of my life. So, but sometimes selfishness can be good. So anyway, this day, I met. At that time, I thought his name was Shosani because you would tell me that your name was Shosani, and we met, and you were outside the. Actually, you know what would be cool? Why don't you tell how did that experience go for you, and then I'll just like piggyback off of that because I've shared what I felt it was like for me, and that was just a monologue, but. Now we have you. So like, why don't you share what that was like, and then I'll piggyback off it.
Yeah. Going back to the day we met, I'd been in the city, walking around. The night before, I slept in this alley in Bowery under like a chair. It was pretty rough. I was feeling terrible, so lost, so directionless, so just unable to cope with where I was or who I was or what I had done or how did I get here. And I felt like I needed a place to stay or get my bearings or some kind of kindness because I felt so lost. And I ended up walking around. I was actually trying to get back to Times Square.
Oh, wow.
Which I was very off,
yeah, you're like the Lower East Side.
Yeah, like way off. But at that point, I hadn't slept for, or had like a sleep. I napped on and off, and it was
wow.
It was getting late, and I was walking down the street, and it was dark, and I was cold, and I felt so alone, like more alone than I had ever been in my life. And I looked up at the sky, and it was dark down the street, and I saw this light like far away, and I kept walking, and it was a cross, and in the sky, and I was like, what is this? And I walked closer and closer, and it ended up being the sign for the place.
Wow.
Where I met you, which it almost was calling to me in a way, which was amazing to me, and looking back in it now feels like it really was meant to happen.
Wow. And,
Come on. So I walked up to you guys, and I asked if you knew a place where I could spend the night or something. And,
yeah.
And at first I was pretty nervous. I thought I was just gonna walk away after, but you guys all circled around me and prayed for me, and that made me feel more in tune with less of who I was and more of what the world is, or world, or people, or whatever, some sort of energy that wasn't totally me in the moment. and I felt like there was a reason I was there at that time to listen to you guys, and so I stayed, and you guys helped me out. I got in the car. What was it, Demo's car? Or
Yeah, it was Demo's car. It's awesome.
Yeah. And
Great memory.
you guys prayed for me and converted me, and it was really an amazing experience, because I felt like at that point it was so, what an impossible situation for me to be in, that it felt like I was led there. I have no doubt in my mind I was led to that point at that time in my life.
Wow.
And yeah, I took the train with you, and I slept over at your apartment. The next day, you gave me directions, and I went to meet up with my father and my brother, and we went back to their hotel, and the next day, I was admitted to Bellevue Hospital in Manhattan. You know where that is?
Yeah, the one on 30th and 1st.
Which really was, it being in there was definitely the lowest I've ever been. Lower than I was at any time before.
Yeah. Wow.
But it really helped me. It helped me realize that there's a reason for this, or I need to be here. It really brought back my faith in needing to be alive, needing to live, not just for me, but for God and for others.
Wow. Man, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, and then we can go forward from there. But as we take a pivot real quick, it was wild. Man, listening to you. I remember, and we went to like 4 places to try and find a good fit for you.
Yeah, to find.
And then so this is what happened, is that by the 4th place, like Crossroads or some roads, we found out, we were like, how old are you? And how old were you?
I was 16 at the time.
You were 16. Bro, I was losing it. I was like, oh my God, Lord Jesus. And I was like, help us. I was like, because it could be really crazy. You know what I mean? It could be really bad, because you're like a minor, and so I was just so happy because, I've always been on the side of like kind of the runaway and the person that is sort of like saying like, hey, this stuff is happening, like I need to get away, like a misfit kind of thing, and but because of Demo and the other people that were in the car, I had to trust him because he's my friend and he's a dad. And so I had to trust him, because when he suggested that you call your parents, like I was really wrestling with that at first, actually, because I was like, what if your parents are like not treating you well? What if we're like bringing you back into a harmful situation again? And I was just like really praying, like, God, what do I do? And I'm just so happy that when your parents got on the phone, they were so
It's 9 o'clock.
happy. They were so happy to hear your voice. And it just really, it was like, whoa, like, man, I'm just going to trust however this goes. Because, you hear so many stories of like broken families and kids running away and stuff, but you don't really hear about kids that maybe run away, but their families really love them. And there's just a lack of connection, a lack of communication. And so that night was really wild for me. It really changed my perspective on family. It changed my perspective on kids, especially like your age group and stuff. Like, so from there, I thank you for trusting us as much as we trusted you, and it just worked out. And then it was like, we need to, we're not finding anywhere to go. So I just thank God that I had some space. And then when you were able to come, we were able to like go over the books that were in your bag, the Tolstoy and Kierkegaard. And I was like, this guy's reading Kierkegaard, he's 16 years old. Like, I was amazed and then that's when you said your name is Bodhi. And it was really powerful because I believe you said that says something that meant like seeking knowledge or like something, right?
Yeah,
What does that
Bodhi
mean?
is actually Sanskrit. It's from the Buddhist religion,
Wow.
and my dad was very into Buddhism and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was it means like to wake up to your true self, or to know,
Wow.
to be one with more than just
Wow.
you.
Wow.
Which is is a very heavy expectation to live up to for any person.
Yeah.
Especially if it's your own name.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. But I mean, I think it's so amazing because like I felt like that night was the first step in you getting to know your true self. Right? And like on this path of like healing, wholeness, health, but also like embracing like who you are, like the artist, the creative, the I feel like honestly like I felt like you were so free even though you were going through a situation that needed health, that needed support, from like a more clinical perspective, but I was just amazed because I'm 42 years old, and my times of like doing outreach at CBGBs and like punk shows, it's like really like kind of past me, but I've always had a heart for kids. I've always had a heart for young men and just people in general, anyone really, people in general, but especially like I feel like outcasts, like misfits, you know? And so when the more I heard your story, the more I was like, wow, this kid is amazing. This kid like he just hasn't heard, like he hasn't been affirmed that he's awesome. Like that he's really awesome. That like man, this kid's smart, man. Like I don't know if his teachers are really paying attention, but it wasn't that you were like bad in school or anything. It was like if you don't mind, like could you share a little bit, cuz I feel like your story is not just helpful for people that like to listen to podcasts or Jesus, but it's actually really helpful for folks that are wrestling with like mental health issues, identity issues, really like realizing that they're different, and then being supported, that being creative is good. It's a beautiful thing, and that we can learn a lot from it. So if you could like explain a little bit, when we were on the train, we connected over like Kurt Cobain wearing a dress and like Nirvana. And I talked about how when I was like 16 and stuff, I wrestled with different things. And when I saw Kurt Cobain wear a dress, it just made me feel like I can identify with him. Like he's a weirdo. Like he's out there too. And and if you could just like sort of maybe talk a little bit about basically what you said to me, if you don't remember, is that you were like, I came here to be as weird as I can, to do drugs, and to use the rest of my savings and go out with a bang, and then your ultimate plan was to take your own life, and I'm so glad you didn't. And then we'll talk about yeah, amen. So like yeah, so like maybe talk about that, like that sort of like, I don't, it's not dysphoria, but it's sort of like there was like a struggle, a struggle there, but also like understanding you're creative and you're smart, yeah.
Yeah, I think my, especially being from Weymouth, which is a fairly small town with not the best education, best resources or anything, I always felt like everything that I was trying to do or who I was never valued, or it was never enough. And I, despite I may have acted very confident because I personally am good at orating and speaking, but I felt in my soul I was very little, and I was less. I felt like I was running away and losing the potential that I could have had. Everyone I was around, I felt like only knew a side of me that wasn't who I was. I had so many other dimensions to who I was as a human being that wasn't, I felt like I was just a clown, or I was putting on makeup every time I went to a place, a persona, a thing that I wasn't.
Wow.
And it got so stifling to the point where I was so done with everything. I was willing to never see anyone I had never known ever again, to give up all comforts that I had in my life, and leave it all behind to try and find who is Bodhi. Why do I feel like this? Is there anything that makes me, what is, basically I thought, I can't be the only one that is like this. I don't think there's something wrong with me. I think there's something wrong with where I am. It's run by people who don't realize that it's a good thing, or it's a good thing to try new things, or to not care about what another person will say about what you do, to fully develop and explore what it means to be an artist, to be a person, to be a human, to exist, and I wasn't doing that. And at the same time, I had several relationships in my life with family and friends that made me feel like I wasn't worth anything. And I wanted to find, to just, if I was really this worthless, why am I even here at all? That's why I went away in the first place.
Wow. Yeah, man, thank you so much for sharing that. It's like, I'm just, give me grace, but I'm amazed. And that's why I'm just amazed. And I feel like God is saying, like, listen to this generation. Listen to this generation, because I feel like with all the information and with all the stuff and with all the sort of like pioneering that my generation and maybe like a generation after me and then you, like we've been pressing in for this sort of like soul care and self-help and like, trigger warnings and everything, right? And it's not an agenda as much as it can be used as an agenda, but it's really about like, we want to be fully human. We want to be fully human. And as a Christian, like, I want to be fully human and I want to be fully Christian, So if I have outside the box ideas, like, I need space to be able to be me. Now, when I think about being 16 years old and then being in part of this world and everything, it's like, in this timeline, I'm just like so amazed by you. It was like, when you told me your story, I was like, oh, you're not dying. Like, you're not dying today. You're not dying tomorrow. The Bible says, I will live and declare the goodness of the Lord. And I'm just so grateful because just hearing you share about that, it's like, how do you think, knowing, this might be like, putting you on the spot, but I just felt like as I was listening to you, like, how could we, as older folks, or like, people leading youth ministries and things of that nature, how could we hear youth better and come alongside them better and support them better? What would you have liked in that moment? I'm so thankful you're not there now, but like, I'm just saying then,
I think the most important thing I wanted from an older person or someone, in that age range or position, was less of, almost a coddling, this is what, less coddling and more understanding. Or I was so turned off by people not listening and always saying, this is what I went through, so your experiences aren't as valuable, or almost using my pain as a crutch for them to explain their woes in their life. Yeah,
Wow.
I think that's something people don't really realize is when you really truly want to listen to someone, you listen, you sit there, you absorb everything they say, and try to not pass judgment, try to not, interject with anything till they're fully, got it out of them, and only then should you know should you say something that you think will help. It's the only goal when another person is struggling is to help them. When someone falls, your only instinct should be pick them up, not is anyone around to watch me pick them up so I look good.
Wow.
I think,
Wow.
especially with people struggling, it's a very internal journey. It's almost, I always find it's a testing of, I think God is testing you as a person if you have these problems in your life, and
Wow.
it's almost a personal journey. He's almost testing you because he loves you and he knows this will change you.
Wow.
I don't know. It might not make any sense, but that's
I think it made a lot of sense. Like, you can tell me if I'm picking it up correctly or not, but it sounds like what you're saying is that, like, if when you're sharing, or when you're sharing something that you're like going through or wrestling with in your development as a young person, and maturing into a young adult and then an adult, it's like imperative that we take the time to fully listen, like to active listen to your heart, and not dismiss it as like a phase, or as something that you're just going through. And like, I went through the same thing in the 90s. It's like, no, like, I'm going through something and you had your day, but like, this is what I'm going through, and this is 2000 something, and this is what it looks like for me now. And it looks also different because I'm like differently gifted, and so I need to be like honored, loved, appreciated, and even challenged according to my gifting, and I love that you shared that, because it makes me really think, are we taking time to really see people's gifting? Are we really taking time to see people's like gifts? Yeah.
Yeah, it felt like I was knocking on everyone's door and they didn't give me the time of day. They wouldn't open the door for me and listen. But in the very back of my head, someone was knocking on my door and I wasn't letting them in until I met you guys, which was God.
Wow.
Because I always felt there was something missing, or something I needed to seek, or something I wasn't ready for that was calling me. And I felt like it finally clicked, when I had, ran away.
Man, what was that like? Like, you said you slept under a chair in the Bowery?
Yeah. That the night before I met you guys was really crazy for me. It almost sounds fake when I tell people. They're always like, "This actually happened." Wow. So I was in Bowery. I wanted to eat like some Chinese food, and I stopped at some place, and I didn't have any money, so I asked this French tourist couple for their leftovers. I just ate them there, and then I waited outside of the restaurant, and people coming out would give me their leftovers and I'd eat them.
Wow.
And then I tried to fall asleep, and I couldn't fall asleep because it was really uncomfortable. It was freezing. I was lying on my backpack under chairs in the street, and I couldn't fall asleep, so I decided to keep walking. I kept walking around, and I ended up taking the train back to Times Square again, because that was the place I had been selling drawings, the day before. And at that point, I was so desperate for any sort of relief from, pain or anything. I couldn't fall asleep, so I needed a way to fall asleep. And the only way I knew at that time was marijuana. And so I bought some marijuana off this really shady looking guy in this, walking around Times Square. And I didn't have anything to smoke it with. So I went to the 7-Eleven, and I went in it, and they wouldn't sell me any lighters or anything.
Wow.
But this guy who was in the line said, wait outside. So I waited outside, and this large Indian man came out, and he said, I'll give you the light. And as he was lighting, this police woman walked by, and she looked at me, and I was really nervous and very paranoid at the time. So I dropped everything I had, and I ran. And I ran down the street really fast, and I tripped, and I heard this car pull up, and it was going vrr, and I looked, and I was like, oh, it's over now. But it wasn't the police lady. It was the Indian guy, and he said, get in.
Whoa.
So I jumped in his car, and it turned out he was one of those delivery guys who deliver Grubhub or whatever, the food people.
Wow.
And he was driving around the city, and we drove around all night, and I told him, about my struggles, and he told me something I'll never forget. He said, people in your life are he said that I was like a bus stop, and people in my life were like buses. The buses come, they stay for a while, and then they go. And the bus stop doesn't chase after the bus, because another bus will come, And that really hit me, because I'd been chasing after people in my life that didn't want me around. And I didn't realize that there's always another bus that will come, and it might actually value you as a person.
Wow.
So he dropped me off at a corner at 5 in the morning, and then I walked to Central Park that day, and then eventually I met you guys later in the day.
Wow. Bro. Man, that could have been so something else. That could have been so crazy, man.
Something really bad could have happened.
Really bad, bro. Really bad.
Because I almost think it was he was like an angel or something. It doesn't feel real. It feels too amazing.
The book of Hebrews talks about how we sometimes can entertain angels unaware. And so some people believe that possibly can be human beings sometimes. Angels take on the form of a human being. Man, I feel wow, God really, really was watching over you and covering you. Man, God, bro, I'm so glad you're okay.
Yeah, I think about...
I'm losing it, because when I met you, I was not a father type guy. Now I'm a year older. I've been through some more stuff, grown more with God and people, and now I'm oh, I want to be a dad. You know what I mean? And I'm just oh my God. You know what I mean? I'm thinking about your parents. I'm thinking Demo, So, God, thank you. Let's just take a moment to say thank you, Jesus, for taking care of Bodhi. Thank you. Yeah, so that's really wild. I love what he said to you. I love that this stranger looked out for you, and he turned out to not be a stranger. He kind of turned out to be a neighbor. Very similar to what Jesus did when he talked about who is your neighbor, and he described the Samaritan person. The Samaritans were actually enemies of the Jews. And but Jesus said the one who was your neighbor was the Samaritan, because the Samaritan saw this person being beat up and taken advantage of, and the Samaritan took care of them and made sure that they were well. And then went to the furthest extent of telling the person who owns the inn where this person was staying that if there's any expenses that exceed how much I've given you, I will come back and pay that as well. So it's being a neighbor really means caring for people, showing compassion. And I was so when I first moved to New York, I was homeless for a while, and I lived in shelters, and And man, I met a lot of people that were kind to me and like helped me and steer me. And then I met people in New York that were just like, get it together, like it's not my problem. And then, but like, I love that about God. I know that sometimes I think I shared this with you when I met you, but sometimes I really would think that God sent me to New York to starve to death, and I would, and I don't look like I'm doing that well. This beard is crazy, but I walked to the water. I'd walk to the water because I was staying in Bellevue at the time, right next to it, that like castle, that Dracula-looking place.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's where I was staying, and it was crazy. The whole building is just like an ashtray. And so it's crazy. It was like I would be like trying to like keep it clean, and then it's like no, I might as well just put like people are smoking cigarettes inside there. So it's like you just put your cigarette out in a chair. Anyway, it's crazy. So it's like it's sad because there's a lot of good people in there when I was there, and they were victims to 9/11. They were lawyers that lost everything, and I remember I'd walk to the water and I would sing this song by a gospel singer named Fred Hammond, and it said, "Every step of a righteous man is ordered by God," and then there was another song that he sang, something about like being close to God or whatever, and I would cry and I would look at the water and I'd be like, God, did you bring me out here to starve? Like, why'd you bring me here? Why'd you bring me here? Because I wanted to go to Florida and I wanted to go upstate, but I couldn't. My dad was on hard times. He was not in a good place, and my parents were, my mom and stuff. It's just not going to work out. So I was in New York, and the only people I knew were like other people I knew from like, getting in trouble. But luckily I'd given my life to Jesus. They had given their lives to Jesus. And so we just tried to make it work. And so when one got a job, they would come and visit at the shelter. And when we got a job, we came and visit the other one at the shelter, and just like each one helped one, And it just goes to show that like I think New York sometimes gets a bad rap, or like people are scared or whatever. You shouldn't be scared now. I mean, New York's like Disneyland. But just personally saying. But like I feel like when people are going through stuff, God provides a way, and I think it could have been like really bad, but God gave you grace, and He just preserved you until you met us, and I'm so grateful that it's so wild. Like I really just wanted to like find you a place to go, and then I was naive. I didn't know you were 16. I thought you were like 20 something. You know what I mean? I was like, what 16-year-old's going to be out here, But I didn't know about trafficking. I didn't know about this stuff. Like, I knew bad things were happening, but I was just like, nah, not like that, That's in like other countries. And man, I've grown a lot. And so I'm just really grateful for that. And so, yeah, I'm so grateful for that. And it's so wild, that story, because okay, I'll give you this one story quick, and then we'll transition so we can like lead up to when you came back and like how awesome that was. And so a long time ago, I was like, in trouble, and I was in jail, and I remember I used to do any drugs that were put in front of me, for the most part. Crack and those crazy stuff, like not really, because that stuff scared me, because people's lives were like totally messed up from those things. But like heroin, even though that messes up people and stuff, it seemed like the rock and roll thing to do. But I didn't do it, thank God. But like pills and things like that, I would do them. So I'm like basically in jail. I'm like not really been in jail before, and I'm just on a death sentence. Like I'm just like I don't care. Like I don't care if I die. Like all this crazy stuff. I'm so depressed. I feel so misunderstood. I feel like no one understands me. And I met this guy who's from like South Africa. It was a white dude from South Africa. And they exist. And And he gave me these pills. I think they were speed or something. And I remember that night taking them, and it being so like at high, like so crazy. I thought my chest, like I thought my heart was gonna come out of my chest, and just like explode, you know. And I remember like feeling like I don't want to be high anymore. I don't want to be high anymore. And I forced myself to throw up. So then my friend comes over. He's a guy who's been in jail a lot, and he's just like, let me help this kid. And so, because I was like 17, 18, and so he's like, bro, what are you doing? And I was like, I took some pills, you know what I mean? It's rough in here. He's like, are you crazy? He was like, you couldn't even move. Like, this guy could have took advantage of you. Like, you know how much crazy stuff could have happened? And I'm like, wow, this guy's like a criminal, but he's like a dad. You know what I mean? And I just was like totally oblivious. I was just like thinking like nothing of it. Like, I was just like, whatever, like I deserve it. I thank God that he covered me in that place too. And he allowed me to be able to come to know him and change and continually grow. And I'm still growing and still learning. But it's so beautiful. I'm so glad to hear that God covered you and protected you, man. I had no idea. And I totally get what you're saying. Like, I think also too, like, I think there's a part of you had to admit that, like, when you saw the cop and you dropped everything, you were like, maybe this life isn't for me. I don't know.
Yeah. I think at that point I was so on bare bones instinct, like so fight or flight, that I didn't even think about anything, you know, really.
Wow.
I had been so delirious because before I'd run away, I'd been really, you know, paranoid, and I'd stayed up, you know, the week before too.
Wow.
So by the time I was, you know, I wasn't quite seeing things, but it was like almost out of body in a way.
Dang.
I don't know how to describe it.
Wow. Like you're on autopilot.
So, even like the slightest like thing that was, yeah, I thought perceived as a threat, I would freak out about, you know.
Yeah, you're probably, your senses were just like on overdrive, you know, because like you're sleep deprived.
It was like I was so focused, but at the same time so intensely scrambled. I don't know how to describe it.
Wow.
You know?
You also mentioned too when we were on the train that you had gone off your medication, like that you were taking medication, but that you went off of it. I know that other people can relate to that. Like, what was that like for you? And it's funny. This is not where I wanted to go, but I think we should. What about and so now, like maybe this is when you should maybe talk about like post Bellevue and sort of like that.
So I after I went to Bellevue, I had gotten a lot more depressed in there.
Okay.
So finally, after 3.5 or 4 weeks around then, they sent me over to this hospital called McLean Hospital back to Massachusetts.
Wow.
And that was when I was in there. That was when I really started to calm down enough to try and get better.
Okay.
Know? Because in Bellevue, I was still really frightened because I was in a mixed ward. There's a lot of kids in there that were, you know, violent, and it was very, you know, I was very on edge.
Yeah.
They wouldn't tell me when I would leave, so I was constantly, like, really paranoid, and I thought if I did the slightest thing out of line, like, they would keep me there longer, because, it's like if you went, someone said, go run as far as you can right now. You probably wouldn't, you know, you probably go like 3 or 4 miles. I personally would. But if someone said, go run 6 miles, at least you have an end, you know, you're going to run that distance and you can actually get farther. When you don't know what the end is, it makes every struggle so much harder, and hopelessness is so much more. prevalent. So when I was in there, it was so hopeless. And I remember I had the lowest day of my life. I sat in my bed in my room, and I just laid there and I stared at the ceiling. I couldn't move. I was so upset, and I just kept hugging my pillow and hoping, that I would be okay,
Yeah.
But what was the original question? Oh, medication. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So
anyway,
when I met you, and then like coming off medication and why you felt you wanted to do that in a way, like that sort of problem, and then getting on it and sort of like seeing the benefits of it, or whatever, however you got healthy,
Yeah. So I think a very common feeling, at least from people I've talked to, youth with medication, is that you want to get off it because you don't feel real anymore. You feel like you're dependent on a thing, and you're not in tune with who you are, and you can't grow and develop, your character, or person. And that's why I came off it in the first place.
Wow.
Because I felt like it was cheating me out of life. And when I was in McLean, they put me on another medication called Abilify, and that was the worst medication I've ever been on in my life.
Really?
I couldn't think. I couldn't do things. My appetite, my weight gain went through the roof. I couldn't run anymore. I felt like a walking vegetable.
Wow.
In a state of not living. It was the opposite of peace. It was just pain. And so I got off of that after I came to Japan, actually, where I had went after the hospital for some rest, which the med had made it hard to rest there too.
Just real quick, was the doctors receptive to you when you were saying you're not having beneficial responses to the meds?
So I was scared to tell them because at that point I developed a very insane fear of anything to do with medical personnel.
Gotcha. Yep.
So I was afraid to tell them anything, but finally I told my mom, I can't do this anymore. This is ruining my life. And so he called the doctor and did all the hard stuff for me.
Okay,
so
cool.
I got off of that. But I was still on Prozac at the time, which is for depression. And I was just on that for a while. And I was recently put on another med, which has been the best state I've been in a long time. And I think what people need to hear is don't be afraid of all meds, be very afraid of the ones that make you feel less you and immediately stop. But if it's something that allows you to get out of bed every day, it's not evil,
Wow. Really appreciate that. I appreciate
because
you
I
saying
think
that.
People don't really realize the technical aspect of mental health is everything in your brain is chemicals, and if your chemical imbalance is off, it's not something you can just fight through it. You might need an actual thing. Like if you get a cut and you don't get it stitched up, that it heals worse.
Yeah.
I think people should look at it like that more. It's almost like, when you're sick, you take a med to feel better. When you're sick in the head, you should help that, but not at the expense of who you are as a person. Because I think as creatives, we almost use our chaotic mood swings or energy sometimes to channel it into art, and I think that was a problem I had a lot. Was
Wow.
I'd be having a really terrible time, but I'd be so scared of losing a creative edge because of that horrible time that was feeding into the art, that I wouldn't do meds, you know.
Gotcha. Totally gotcha. I feel like Kanye said this on the Joe Rogan podcast just the other day. Like, why he didn't want to like get help was because he thought it would like tarnish his creative ability, because he said when he was on it he didn't feel human. And
yeah, that's exactly how I describe it too. But I think as artists, we often get consumed by our art. You know, if you look at Jackson Pollock or you know, a lot of these guys, Basquiat, Kurt Cobain, you almost get consumed by the art, and it literally kills you. To live, to have the energy of humanity channeling through you as an artist, you know, burns you up sometimes.
Wow. Yeah, man, that's really good.
I read, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm just gonna plug in my computer real quick.
Yeah, one of my favorite writers, J.D. Salinger, from New York City. He has a book called Seymour, an Introduction, and it describes how the art, you know, consumes an artist, and it, you know, and that really resonated with me, because his books are about New York, you know, and it almost feels like it really resonates with me as someone who, you know, was aimless in New York, like The Catcher in the Rye, you know.
Yeah.
And it really hits in a special way, because he has such an energy as a writer that it almost makes you think, like, you know, I feel like as artists sometimes we're just vessels for art to live through us more than people. Wow. Sometimes, I don't know if that makes any sense, but
yeah, break that down.
Yeah, like when I play the piano, sometimes I feel like it's playing me. Or
you play the piano?
Oh yeah, my piano's right here.
Oh man, bro, you're so talented, bro. Man, the devil's a liar. Okay, go ahead.
or like when I'm drawing, it's almost like if I pay attention too much, it ruins it, because it's almost not me doing it. It's like it's a force, you know.
Very interesting. Very interesting. It's funny because I feel like what you're experiencing. So you're 17 now, or 18? Okay, 17. And then I'm 42, and just a couple years ago, before I started, like, you know, really thinking about my walk with God again, and really going through like a healing from some life experiences and stuff, I often would think that that drinking heavily, smoking, these different things that I used to not do, because I identified as straight edge and all this stuff, but because now I felt like I was no longer like having convictions, I felt like the more I went into sin or whatever, like using and not using, but just like drinking and these kinds of things, I would often think that it's helping me to develop my like theology. It's helping me to become a better writer, to become a better author. I would watch shows like Californication. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but like, I mean, it's kind of like a crazy show. But the writer, David Duchovny, he only can write what he's experienced. So he lives this crazy cavalier lifestyle, but yet he's in love with one woman, even though he's with tons. But like he's like sort of committed to one person in his heart, and at the same time he can't write unless it's like kind of like what he's actually doing. And I felt that way. I was like, I have no passion. Like, I need to live this way. Like I won't be able to write if I stop going to bars. I stop being involved in all this stuff. And then what was really funny is that a few years later, like now, it's like all coming together, but it's so much more clear and focused, you know. And it is like I can still write that way, you know, but it's a little different. But I'd rather be healthy than like some famous writer who has no peace, you know. And yeah.
Yeah, I think especially in America, it's conditioned that success is the only goal. And I think being happy is, or being self-fulfilled is almost more noble in a way. I don't know how to truly explain it. But,
yeah, happiness.
you know, because I think
it's a good thing.
If you can do it, you know, if you can do it while you're on a substance, it still exists in you when you're sober as well. Dude. You know,
dude,
you're
so wise, bro. You're like 17. It's amazing.
It's still
Everyone
there.
Who's older, take notice.
Because you know, substances can unlock different parts of your brain you wouldn't normally use, but at the end of the day, it's still, you know, you still have the same brain, whether you're on something or not. And you know, I think you should, you know, do whatever will bring you happiness, you know. And I think at the end of the day, anyone who uses a substance, at least with me and everyone I've known, is doing it because they lack something and not because, you know, they truly enjoy. At the end of the day, you can tell yourself, I really like doing this, but I don't think I've ever met a single person who did the things they did, you know, because they truly enjoyed it. I think it was always to run away or to deal with a real world problem, you know.
Wow. So wise, bro. Exactly. I felt the exact same way. And I'm that person. I literally realized. So I one of the small examples, but it's a real example because cigarettes is so addictive. Like I wasn't like really like doing drugs. I'd smoke weed every once in a while, but when I stopped smoking cigarettes, I was like, you know, I had tried stopping before. I even went 10 years for a while, you know, when I was straight edge. And then I just sort of stopped. And then I was like, oh, one day I was like, oh, I haven't had a cigarette in like a few days or a few weeks, right? It turned out that I was like, when's the last time I had a cigarette? It turned out it was 3 months. And I was like, what?
Wow.
What, man, what changed? And I realized in that moment, I'm happy. And, you know, I was part of my church community. God was doing so much. I was like, so happy. I was finally being me, you know, caring about what I care about, standing for people I stand for, but being me, being Christian, you know, I believe in God. I'm a corny evangelical. It's just who I am, right? But at the same time, I found happiness. I found contentness. And I was like, all those other times I tried to quit, even when I was straight edge, I wasn't happy. I was never happy. So I always ended up going back. And I said this to my roommate just the other day. And he said, yeah, same thing for me. When I realized like what I had, I no longer was really tempted with like abusive drinking or smoking cigarettes anymore. And it was because like I felt like I had finally come in contact with something that meets my needs, and it was God, you know.
Yeah, I think it's very important to not just stop something, but to replace it with something else.
Dude, you're so wild. People are gonna beat me up. Like they're gonna be like, "Yo, shut up." But like, that's so right, man. Dude, I like it's so amazing because I didn't learn this since I was like 30 something. But yeah, I'm really happy for you, and I think it's also important to just like I really just like to encourage you, but also not to just. I think sometimes we do people a disservice, whether they're young or older, with just saying like how awesome they are, and not like being genuine in the sense of like, man, keep going, like keep doing what you're doing, and if you come to struggle, reach out, you know what I mean, or if as you were reaching out during when George Floyd was murdered, and yeah, you know you were like, yo, can you talk, you know what I mean, because of like just everything and Christianity and like amen. Yeah, we could probably talk about that too, but uh that was really powerful and amazing because um you saw God move in the other areas, but you're like, why isn't God moving in this area? And it became like you're taking care of you, but that's not where it ends. Now that you're taking care of yourself, like you can help take care of others too, or care about others from a whole place. And at 17, that's really amazing. And I feel like I'm seeing that a lot. Like I work with some 20-something-year-olds, and being like a barista, but I'm really amazed. Like I keep telling people, in church, I keep telling people around me, I'm like, stop sleeping on the younger generation, man. They know what's popping, man. That's why they're not like turned on to like what you're saying, man, because they're just like, yeah, we heard about that. Yeah, you had your glory days, but like we're doing this. And I love that. Like one of the things I noticed about like your generation is like you're very like, okay, cool, that's what's happening, all right, we're gonna go do it. Like you produce content, you produce artistic expression, you're actually producing. And I think like older folks, we don't recognize it because it's not the production that we want or that we did. But like the sooner we come around y'all and support you, and yeah, and just your input, it's like really cool. So anyway, I wanted to so moving forward, to sort of like say, this is also awesome. Like you've shared, I think this is going to help so many people that like listen. Like your story is really powerful, man. And I know you have good friends. I know like when you said listen to this episode, like the last one, like it was like most episodes I ever had, the most listens I've ever had. I was like, wow. I was like, God, man, like he's talented, he's a special kid, but he's also like has influence. You're a leader, bro. You're a leader. And I said that on the train. I was like, you're a leader. That's why you stand out. That's why you felt like it never made sense, or like you were misunderstood, because you were meant to lead. Just when people are not leaders, it takes them time to realize that they need to follow, and so they become a little more leader, like, I think all of us can become leaders, but like we have to be a follower first, and then like you did that, but earlier, like you were ahead. And like when I was a kid, when I was younger, and still to this day, I feel like you're always going to be searching and growing. But like when I was younger, I was always like, I don't know, cats were learning about like math or whatever, and I wasn't good at math. I know how to count a register back to 300 though, but I was like, I know how to keep that drawer good for the restaurant, but like or the coffee shop. But I just like I was just sort of like, why are my parents divorced? Why is it like this? Why do I think this way? Why am I just like angry? And I knew there was some internal turmoil going on inside me. Didn't have the vocabulary words to express it. Didn't know how to tell anyone. Didn't trust anyone. But I knew what was happening inside me. And when I got older and I learned the words, I was like, whoa, I knew what was going on. And people know. I think how we can come alongside people is like, give them the words. Like, and I think that's what social work should do and counselors should do. But at least in the past, I felt like social workers and counselors were sort of predatory. But I pray that they're changing and they're growing. But I wanted to talk about. So cool. So now you've gone through Bethel. You're now at not Bethel. That's a church. Um, Bellevue. Um, and then it's called McAllen or McAllen.
McLean Hospital.
McLean.
Yeah.
Now you go through McLean. Um, now talk about how you. Now you're experiencing like being able to work on like getting healthier or at least like respond to the treatment and find peace, and then your family, and then I guess you could lean that into like coming back to New York or going back to school. How did that transition happen? Because I really think it's important. I mean, you know, yeah. If
I
you want
think
to,
what people don't realize are almost media or things you read or something is it's not a quick I'm better now. It's not a quick I'm okay. It's a very long, slow process that may feel like you're not getting anywhere, you know. And when I came back, I when I got out of McLean, I
1 second, bro.
oh yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Recording. Okay. Awesome. Just getting a coffee. Okay.
Yeah. When I when I came back from McLean, I went straight to Japan, thinking, "Oh, I'll have a couple weeks of rest, and then I'll be all right." And I came back, and that whole summer, I still felt very, almost. I read a book, All Quiet on the Western Front.
Whoa.
They described it as shell shock. That is the perfect way to describe it. And I recently read a book called, what was it called? It was by Huey Newton. It was an autobiography, and he described coming out of jail the first time, and that sense of distortion or removal or alienation from society and people and reality,
Mm-hmm.
and the lack of a schedule, the lack of, a complete and utter dominant authority over you telling you your every move. It can feel very disorienting, even though in a natural state you shouldn't be, you shouldn't be forced around. It's almost like I felt like an animal coming out of a zoo. You've been in the zoo and you're in the wild all of a sudden, just thrown in the wild, and you have to fend for yourself, and it felt very, alienating and very disorienting. So it took me a while to get back to a state of, almost sanity in a way, or what I consider to be a good place, and that whole summer I was pretty off. I went to see you guys, which was the best part of my summer, honestly.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and that was a very healing step to go back to the place that I had been, and then I caused my family, so much panic and myself, and really experience it again and be like, wow, we're here now, we're all together, we're safe,
Wow.
we can enjoy, and that was amazing. I think that was very helpful. But in September, when school had started again my junior year, I had another slip up, and I ended up in the hospital again for a week. And I think it's very important as a message to other people is just because you slipped up does not mean you're reverting,
Mm-hmm.
And it was very important for me to tell myself, hey, we went backwards a little bit. That doesn't mean we're back in the place we were, where we ran away. We're still improving. And you can't just exponentially grow up, Sometimes you fall a little bit. That doesn't mean you roll all the way down the hill. And coming back from that, having, the rest of the year, and then quarantine was finally a place where I could completely and utterly rest. Complete isolation from everyone, no work, no anything, no one else. I recently ended a relationship with someone, and I finally could rest after all this time, and that's when I could finally rebuild myself as a person, and really think, what do I believe in? Start reading again. Start drawing. I created about 20 or so pieces of work, and I had an art show recently. I wrote music. I explored what I believed philosophically, politically, and many other things. And a real enrichment period of my life. And at the same time, I started protesting, helping people, going out, donating, stuff like that. And really trying to say, what is a change that other people can experience. And also, I'd gone through this. I want to work 3 times as hard to make sure that no one else has to experience this level of pain, and that's what really motivates me a lot of the time. And I think coming to now, where we are now, I think I'm actually at a place where I feel very secure in who I am, not afraid to say something that might be a little controversial to some people, but truly, makes me say, hey, this is a good thing, and I think living without fear for the first time in a very long time is a beautiful thing, and I really, I feel really good at this point in my life.
Wow. It's awesome. It's really awesome, man. It's so good to hear that. Yeah.
And it's for the first time in a while I can look back and look at what I've done and reflect, and say, hey, I could have done this better, without feeling like it was an attack on my entire, person.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, bro. You're I feel yeah, go ahead.
I think a lot of things are less about becoming more or less and more about switching things around. I don't think I'm less fragile. I think I'm fragile in the right parts.
Wow. Explain that. What do you mean by that?
Well, fragile, old, back in before, I feel like my ego, when someone said something about me or what I did or criticized what I had said, it hurt, and really fragile, so I'd get into a defensive standpoint. Now I can kind of listen to what someone says and say, hey, I see what you mean. I'm not going to get angry about it. And, switch where I'm fragile to someone says, hey, I feel really, terrible, and be more empathetic, more able to listen, and more fragile in a sense that I'm looked at as someone who you can talk to instead of someone who criticizes you.
Yeah.
It's the same with, I think, leaders and followers too, because as you described, I think I'm as much as a follower as a leader. Where I lead in many aspects, I follow in others. Learning.
Yeah.
Learning
it's
the
10
word,
o'clock.
or learning, about the environment, or systemic oppression, or these things. I'm very much a follower, but I'm a leader in the sense that I can take what I've followed and condense it so that other people can learn from my leadership, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. I feel like, yeah, that's why you read so much. I was so impressed by that. Like when we were on the train and your bag broke open, or like you were opening your bag to like maybe change a hoodie or something. I feel like you were wearing a Supreme hoodie. I was like, yo, this dude's out here and he rocking Supreme. But anyway, I remember Rachel was feeling that too. She was like, okay. So yeah, shout out to Rachel. Yeah, you were reading like wild stuff. Like I was like, wow, this guy's really searching, and it blew my mind that you were a kid. It blew my mind, and I feel so encouraged because I feel like the people who come around you, the friendships you're gonna have, they're gonna be really, really great because you have this wisdom and insight because of your own journey that helps you to be able to have wisdom into someone else. And I feel like in my own life, I'm able to do that. And I love that it doesn't matter how old you are. Wisdom is wisdom. You know what I mean? Like insight is insight. And it just, I think you just grow in it more and more. And so yeah, I really appreciate like everything. I didn't know where we would go with the conversation, but I felt like I hope I gave you an opportunity to really just speak and share your heart and share your journey, because it's the more I listen to you, the more it's so encouraging. It just really makes me so. The other day I was at this like worship thing, and it was really cool. We were like worshiping God and praying for the country and everything. And a woman came up to me and she said, we broke into small groups and we took turns praying for our states. But because like you know, I don't just believe what I believe and like, you know, care about like 4 issues or 1 issue. I'm invested, you know. I've read like, you know, the books and everything, and James Baldwin, and so I'm invested, and I really want to see like change, you know what I mean? And so I was there and I was praying for these states that were represented with what I know about those states. And then so this lady comes up to me and I'm like yelling, I'm like, you know, blah blah blah, like I pray that they would see beyond just like ending abortion, but that they would actually help families and set them up to win, so that like that's not an option because they had the time and the space to choose and all these kinds of things, you know what I mean? Like, and so like I've been growing more in like that sort of concern too. But this lady comes up to me and she was like, are you I just feel like you're called to be a youth pastor. Have you ever thought about being a pastor? And I was like, yeah. I was like, wow. And I was like, you know, I love youth, you know, I used to do some things with like punk or whatever. And she's like, no. I think like you're called to like, the way you were praying was just like, I think like you're called to like youth. And I was like, what? So it was just like, well, I was like, I got one friend, you know what I mean? I got Bodhi, you know what I mean? And but I'm really grateful that we could be in your life, that that could be a turning point for you and your family. It was such an honor to meet your dad and your mom and your sister, and really just have my paradigm change, have like your dad's love for you and your mom's love for you, like, you know, shift in me to, I think it really catapulted me into kind of growing into a man that could be a father, you know. Because at that time when I met you, I was a man who like, you know, would like to be married or have another shot, you know. But I pretty much was still like single-minded, and I wasn't really thinking about family. I was thinking about me. I was thinking about like systemic issues, but like outside. And after I met you, I grew more, and I saw that like started getting involved in like these kinds of rescue missions for kids, and I was just like, wow, like there's more Bodhis, like we gotta rescue them, you know, we gotta set them up so that they can become great. And I really appreciate you because I felt like you articulated how we can be better, and how we can support each other. And so I guess I was like, is things good with your family and everything?
Yeah, we're pretty much back to a normal state, you know.
Good.
Well, as normal as we can be.
All right.
You know.
All right. Yeah. What's
Yeah.
it? What's COVID like there?
So our town recently, actually today, issued a warning. We're like in a red zone or whatever.
Oh.
Boston recently got put back on a red zone, which it wasn't. It was nice, but now I can't go out, which stinks. Um,
Oh wow. So they were in quarantine again?
yeah,
Wow.
which isn't fun, but I mean, I think at the end of the day, our personal, annoyances with not being able to do things are a little less important than human life, obviously.
Yeah, I like that, bro. I like that. I posted on Instagram today about dying daily, and what that means to me is like, I sort of refuse, or um I don't obey my self interest solely, but I look to the good for others. And so I look to the good for others, and I look to what's pleasing to God, and I die to myself. So, like, my own self interest, not like eating and drinking water. You know what I mean? Like, duh. But,
Yeah.
like, being selfish, being a jerk. And, so, yeah. I mean, I think I'm good. If there was anything else you wanted to share, you go for it. But I think, like,
Uh.
yeah.
Oh yeah. I was thinking of two things I wanted to share.
Okay.
One is relating to school and people who have had to go to the hospital for mental or even breaking a leg or something and missing a lot of school.
Sure.
Just having bad grades does not define your intelligence.
Mm.
I know I mean pretty intelligent, I think.
Very
and
intelligent.
my grades have really slipped due to a lot of things outside of my control, and I think the most important thing for young people is to remember that there is always more you can continue to do. There is not over because your term ended and you failed this class. That you can always continue to improve, because at the end of the day, what the most important thing for education is for you to connect with the world, and understand what it means to be human. And if you're not, if you can accomplish that, the grade doesn't mean much to me. The second thing is, I was looking at my friend's rug during the summer. weird segue, but I was really close to it because I was really tired and I was almost falling asleep. And I noticed that you can notice each like stitch in the rug, and from very close up, it was just a bunch of random, nonsense, and it looked really, chaotic and ugly. And I stood up and I zoomed out, and it looked like a beautiful pattern. And I went back down, and it really made me think. I don't know what frame of mind I was in at the time, but it made me think like it's almost as if how people interact. We're each like a stitch in it, and it may look really chaotic, but I think every person interacting with the other stitches, which are other people, if you truly zoom out, makes it a beautiful pattern that makes sense and is beautiful. And I think if you zoom out far enough, you zoom out all the problems of the world is a beautiful circle. But
wow.
you zoom out even farther, there's stars and space and everything. And I think it's important to remember that we're all connected. I truly believe that. So everyone out there, you too, anyone listening, please remember that everything you do affects everyone else, and everything other people do affect you, and things happen for a reason. And make sure to have faith and hope, because hope will get you through to another day.
Wow. Awesome. That was great. Man, that was so good, man. How Yeah. So how can I pray for you? So and then we'll close out, or like what's like on your heart that I could pray for, or anything like that. Actually,
Um,
no. Something prayer is important though. How can people support you? Like how can I support you, and how can people support you and like your art and stuff like that? So it's like if you wanted
um,
to say your Instagram or like your website or
oh,
whatever what you're up to.
I mean, I don't have a website, but my Instagram's just my name, Bodhi Kolwaite, BODHIKOLWAITE.
Okay.
Um, I'm gonna start posting more art related stuff on there because I realized that that's a good way to promote it and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna be making prints of some of my art soon, and so if anyone's interested. Uh, Other than that, just I always appreciate when people tell me, you know, improvements, not just wow, this looks good. You know,
Mm.
I really appreciate when people say, hey, what does this mean? Why did you do it like this? Or even criticize the way I present a message because that's how I can learn how to do it better.
Mm. Beautiful. Yep. Yeah, I feel the same about writing or the podcast, but mostly writing. Or videos. Still getting used to that though. Okay. Cool. So you want me to like pray into that? Like just like creative content and like good feedback and to grow more in your art, or
Yeah, sure.
okay. All right. Heavenly Father God, I just thank you so much for Bodhi, Lord. I thank you so much, God, for him taking the time to do this episode. I love that. Yeah, only I feel like only in you and like true actual like friendship can like a younger person and an older person like get along and like connect through art, and also through our story and our journey, and you, God, and like what you're able to do. So God, I pray for Bodhi, Lord. I pray for his ability to continue to connect with people through art, through his prints, Lord, through his music. I pray, God, that he would continue to grow in health and wisdom and insight. And I also pray, God, that he would continue to have fun and enjoy his life. That when things get really serious or heady, that he will be able to take the time to exit and like enjoy and just breathe or watch something that has nothing to do with what it is that he's sort of like thinking about or wants to see change in the world. I thank you, God, for his heart for justice. I thank you for his heart for compassion, and yeah, and just like really his love for people. I pray for his family, his mom and dad, and his sister. And I just pray you continue to cover them and be with everyone in his town and in Boston, God. I pray that we come out of this COVID ASAP. And yeah, I just thank you once again for his life. In Jesus' name, amen. Awesome, bro. Well, I'm good on that, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, one other thing, especially going into, you know, the near future with the election and everything, I think when you think of broad concepts and it's easy to get overwhelmed by how awful humanity seems to be. But what always, brings my faith back is just walking down the block. The people you see, it's beautiful that we even exist. So please remember that we're all people.
So well said, bro. So well said. Man, yeah. Oh, man. It's like that's a good segue. But yeah, I people are awesome. People are awesome. And God is love, and so yeah, I encourage people to think about love. Think about small steps like talking to our neighbors, and in that regardless of how these elections turn out, that we still need to be a neighbor. We still need to love ourselves and love each other. And no matter who wins, really, like, we can create another world. We can create an experience that supersedes policy, politics, legislation. Because hearts, like a heart change, is so much more powerful than just a legislation change. Although they're important, they're very important. So, vote, and also like be a part of your local politics as well, because those are the ones you can actually really tangibly affect. Presidential ones are a little bit bigger, but the local ones, you actually can know your mayor. You could know your representatives, like your district representatives, and you can put pressure on them. You know what I mean? Most people don't really show up to these meetings, so they just do what they think is best for the town. So I encourage that. Civic involvement, super important. It's the way we put our faith in action. And and then also, like, the change of a heart will have you live in a way that you want to see the world live. You know what I mean? So you lead by example before you even get the legislation passed. Like, if you want to see equal rights for everyone, you should love people equally. So, yeah, man, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. 17 years old, telling you to go vote.
I can't even vote in this election.
Yeah, I know. Next year. I was. What's funny is that when I was 18, I was like, oh, I can vote, but I was like an anarchist, so I didn't vote. And I didn't vote for forever, but I've been really, really getting involved in it as I think it's important as a Christian, but also, like, when I was not necessarily more identifying as an anarchist than a Christian, as I got more into the actual theories and believing that it's possible, that made me so much more interested in politics, because that really is the essence of these alternative theories. It's like civic involvement, being a part of it, knowing your leaders, knowing my police officers, knowing, and then voting them out if they're not up to speed. But the only way we can is to not just like vote down the board, which sometimes I'm guilty of. It's like, the more involved and more informed you are, but don't make that your God. But the more informed you are, the more you can make a concrete decision, and also hold people accountable, because you know what they're about. And then you can be like, hey, you said we're going to do this, and you didn't do it. But a lot of us, like me and myself, I was guilty of like caring about few things, but then saying generalizations. And actually, the role of being a citizen, the role of being a part of society and caring for your neighbor, is actually the hard work of like finding out how these things work. And unfortunately, a lot of us don't figure that out till we have like a child, and then we're like, we want our child to have a best life. Well, we should have been thinking about that before that, and then we could have like, anyway. So I just appreciate you saying that, and you can't even vote.
Yeah, well, I've been learning a lot about anarchism, actually.
Oh no! Wow.
Well, I think it's really interesting, the way they look at violence, because to them, violence is anything that harms another person. So, landlords are violent because they don't let you have a human right of living. Or not having access to healthcare is violence and stuff like that, which I thought was a very interesting way to look at, if you are a person who believes in nonviolence, how to end all forms of violence. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing.
That's another. It'll be another episode, but I know what you mean. So cool, man. All right, bro. Well, you have a great night. I love you, man. You really inspire me, bro. and just keep going and reach out whenever you want. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Have a good night.
You too.
All right. I don't know how to. I think like, have you ever recorded? So I stopped recording. Oh, I'll just edit this audio. This is fine.